Every morning I would wake up, before my eyes would even open, my heart would be pounding out of my chest with just normal stress and anxiety. And everything was even great in my life. I was crushing it on paper. I'd always been a high achiever. I'd usually succeeded at anything I put my mind to. And I was constantly stressed and overwhelmed. I didn't even really think this was a problem because it was just so normal for me. And in fact, it is normal. I know I make it sound dramatic, but the way I used to wake up until I started implementing these fundamentals is actually very similar to the way most people wake up. It's normal. Sadly, these days, happiness isn't even normal. Self-confidence isn't normal. Feeling fulfilled isn't normal. What's normal is to wake up exactly how I did every day, feeling anxious and stressed out. I was just really lucky. The only reason I am where I am today is because when I was just about to start graduate school, I was in the right place and the right time, and I met my now colleague, Dr. Jason Selk, who really developed the fundamentals and framework that we both teach and coach people on. I'm going to teach you today some key fundamentals that if you do them consistently, there is no way you are not going to experience significant improvements. When you work on something, it will improve. And this isn't just going to be a pep talk. I'm going to teach you exactly how to work on it. Now, you may be listening to this because you're always looking for that next inch of improvement, or you may be listening because you're really struggling with stress and overwhelm right now, trying to manage it all at a high level. But in fact, that stress and anxiety is serving a really great purpose. It's telling you that something is off in your life and that you're in need of a change. See, we think of stress as just something that lives alongside us as a given. But stress, anxiety, worry, anger, guilt, these things were given to us as a gift, as an alarm system to alert us that something's not right. Something needs to shift. That's why it's so scary that we just accept stress or negative emotion. Like parenting is just stressful. That's what I used to tell myself at a time in my life when I'd really gotten off track. Or being a working parent just means you're going to be overwhelmed. Or this world is just a mess, so anxiety just goes along with that. We have to recognize that our negative emotion, our stress, our overwhelm is designed to alert us that we need a shift. A shift in our thinking, a shift in our habits, a shift in our priorities. So no matter what led you to listen to this, you should be so proud of yourself because that's already sending the signal to your brain that you prioritize you. Now, before we get into the specifics of what the solution looks like, let me give you a little bit of my background. So I have a doctorate in experimental psychology with an emphasis in cognition, so I'm really a researcher by training. I've been coaching for over 15 years now. I also had a long career as a professional dancer. Before I retired from dancing a couple of years ago to really focus full-time on my coaching, I was living sort of a double life for a while. My clients now are all over the country, all over the world really. I'm a mom. I've got 2 boys. And again, I was just really lucky before my career even started, right before I was starting graduate school, to meet my now colleague, Dr. Jason Selk. Now, Jason at the time was just about to start as the director of sports psychology for the St. Louis Cardinals. And his career really skyrocketed quickly from there. So I literally had a front row seat very early on in my career to these fundamentals and tools being implemented and working at the highest level. I was also in a unique position where I was simultaneously applying what I was teaching my clients to my own perfectionist mentality in school and to my dancing career. And at the same time, I was in graduate school working on my doctorate and immersed in the research. So I was really able to experience this stuff from all angles. I think I'm a little unique as a performance coach, and that I'll be talking to a working mom one minute, And then the next I'm talking to a pro athlete, and then a stay-at-home mom, and the next I'm talking to a little 10-year-old gymnast, and then a CEO and a college student next. Now, of course, there are differences in the approach and the starting points, but my philosophy has always been that I don't care who you are. If you want to work on improving, I'm all in. And I am all in at the highest level. We don't just save the good stuff for the pro athlete or the CEO. I know the science. I know how the brain works. I know what's effective. And just as importantly, I know what's not effective. Everything I do, everything we teach is based on the science. It's based on the research. And that research piece is so important to understand because there's just so much out there that's not based on science. You can scroll through Instagram for 30 seconds and get 15 different helpful tips or hacks or tricks, but nothing happens if you don't implement it. And this isn't just about clicking a link to buy something you see on an Instagram story. Making improvements takes action, and it takes consistent action. And also understand that the stuff I'm going to teach you doesn't come naturally. It's not normal. The perfectionist mentality is, in fact, normal. It's the way our brains are designed to work. So what I'm teaching my clients every day, what we're going to build the foundation for today, is how to become abnormal. How to train your brain to evaluate yourself with a relentless solution-focused mindset instead of the normal perfectionist mindset. The relentless solution-focused mindset promotes self-confidence. It actually increases performance, and it helps you manage your priorities so you gain control over your work-life balance. Now, this concept of relentless solution focus, RSF, is without a doubt the most impactful thing that we teach. Relentless solution focus. The definition of relentless solution focus is the mind's ability to stay focused on solutions, especially in the face of adversity. Essentially, it's optimism. Relentless solution focus, RSF, is essentially a way of training optimism. The mind's ability to stay focused on solutions, especially in the face of adversity. Now, the research on optimism has been very clear. Individuals with optimism are healthier, they're happier, more successful, they sleep better, they have better, longer-lasting friendships, they have significantly less of a chance of getting almost every major disease. And here's the big one. People with optimism, with a relentless solution focus, live on average up to 14 years longer than those who don't. And anyone can develop this. I'm going to teach you how. Now, we'll get to what the training looks like. We'll get to the how. But first, we need to understand the science. We need to understand how the brain works. Self-confidence is the number one variable for performance, period. It's empirically studied. There is nothing more important for performance than self-confidence. But people haven't been taught how to foster their self-confidence. And what's normal is for people to evaluate themselves with a very perfectionist mindset, where we beat ourselves up when we fall short and we're quick to shrug off what we do well. Now think about this. Are you the kind of person who does 99 things right in a day, and on the drive home from work, you're focused on the one thing that went less than perfectly? If this sounds like you are totally normal. I feel this every time my kids are sent home with their report cards or assessments or things of that nature. And with every fiber of my being, I want to quickly scan for the bad stuff. I'll get to the good stuff in a minute, but let me look for the bad stuff first. This is totally normal, which means it's the way that we're wired. It's our default way of thinking. But normal in this case is not a good thing. Humans have something called problem-centric thought, PCT, as our normal course of thought, which means that we tend to focus in on problems or our mistakes or shortcomings first. Now, if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, it was important to our survival as a species that we quickly recognize the bear running at us through the woods or the poisonous berries on the bush. But now our resources are much more plentiful, our environments are much more stable, and this problem-centric thought, this PCT, totally erodes self-confidence and performance. And it's terrible for emotional states. So let me explain why this normal course of thought is so bad. Expectancy theory is a theory in psychology that's the basis for most of the work that we do. And it states that which you focus on expands. Now, again, what's normal? The way our brains are designed to work is that you'll do 99 things right in a day and one thing less than perfectly. And what sticks out at you at the end of the day is that one imperfection. So when you're evaluating your performance by focusing on what you feel like you screwed up that day or what you aren't doing well or perfectly, you're making those things more likely because of the way that erodes self-confidence. That which you focus on expands. And what's normal, especially for highly motivated individuals, is to evaluate yourself with a perfectionist mindset. Now, again, what this looks like is that you're quick to dismiss what you're doing well, and you really hone in on and beat yourself up for your mistakes or shortcomings. Think about it like this. Let's say you had a boss who every time you did something well, she was looking the other direction. And every time you made a mistake, she was right there standing over your shoulder. How would that affect your self-confidence? How would that affect your performance and your enjoyment of your job? This is what the perfectionist mindset does. It erodes self-confidence. And remember, self-confidence is the number one variable for all human performance. Now, this doesn't mean that I want you to put on rose-colored glasses and not push yourself to improve or not take accountability for your mistakes. But the normal perfectionist way of evaluating ourselves does not lead to an increase in performance. Now, my guess is that you would never evaluate your team members or your kids the way you evaluate yourself. By now, we know that it's important to point out strengths in others before zeroing in on areas for improvement. But most of us have a much harder time doing this for ourselves. PCT, problem-centric thought, is literally like a tornado. Once you get sucked in, which is really easy to do, it becomes very difficult to get out without casualties. Now, here's the even bigger problem. When we're thinking about or talking about a problem, our brain sends a signal to our body to release cortisol, the stress hormone. Now, certain levels of cortisol are important for our body systems and motivations, but even at moderate doses, this stuff is like low-dose poison coursing through our veins. Cortisol not only makes us feel like garbage, but it significantly inhibits our cognitive functioning. We literally become dumber and less able to solve the problem we're focused on. And over time, higher levels of cortisol do a number on our health. And again, this is totally normal. So the first step toward beating this PCT and the perfectionist mentality is to become better at recognizing it. Recognize. We tend to be really good at recognizing when other people are venting or talking about or ruminating on problems or self-doubt, but it's much more difficult to self-assess. Now, the good news is that we've all been given a fail-safe alarm system that has a 100% accuracy of alerting us when we're experiencing PCT and we're in need of change. It's our negative emotion. Stress, anger, fear, anxiety, worry, frustration, sadness, guilt. Our body doesn't feel anything unless our brain tells it to. So when you're experiencing negative emotion, it's a guarantee that you're focused on a problem or on something that you can't control. That's literally what anxiety is. It's focusing on what you can't control. So step one is to recognize that when you are experiencing negative emotion, Your brain is focused on a problem or self-doubt. And this is a really bad thing when it comes to our health and our ability to resolve or improve that problem. It causes us to underperform. So what do we do about it? The only way to get rid of the PCT, once we recognize, is to replace it. This is the second step of getting a hold of our thoughts, is to replace the PCT. Now here's the thing. This is the only way. We can't just tell ourselves not to think about things, to let go of that mistake we made, or to not think about how the numbers are looking that month, or that the whole team is counting on you to make that free throw. And we've all tried it. We've probably tried it with ourselves and our kids even. Just don't think about it. Just let it go. But I want you to try this exercise. Don't think about a pink elephant. Whatever you do, don't think about a pink elephant. Now, what are you thinking about? The pink elephant, even though I told you not to. And in fact, telling yourself not to think about it is like putting a highlighter on it and making it more likely that you will think about it. And again, when it comes to our problems and our negative self-talk and self-doubt, this is a really bad thing because that which you focus on expands. Now, what this pink elephant exercise represents is something called the theory of dominant thought. Our brain can only fully focus on one thing at a time. Multitasking isn't really a thing. All you're really doing when multitasking is switching your attention from one thing to another. But in this case, the pink elephant is the dominant thought. So telling yourself not to think about it doesn't trick your brain into not having it be the dominant thought. It becomes even more so the dominant thought. So what this means is that when you are focused on a problem, by default, you can't be thinking about the solution. And add this on top of the fact that thinking about problems promotes that cortisol release, which impairs our ability for problem solving. And it makes us less motivated to do something about it. It's a recipe for underperformance, and it's totally normal. So let's go back to that pink elephant exercise. Now I'm going to tell you, don't think about a pink elephant. And that pink elephant's going to come to your mind. But now I want you to replace it with the image of a blue hot air balloon. Now remember, the only way to get rid of that pink elephant is to replace it with something else. The only way to get our minds off the problem, the potential problems, and the negativity and the self-doubt is to replace it with something else. So let's try it again. Don't think about a pink elephant. Now remember, that pink elephant's going to pop up. Just knock it out of there by thinking about a blue hot air balloon instead. That pink elephant might come back. It's okay. Just knock it out of there again by thinking about a blue hot air balloon. It's going to come back. It's okay. Be relentless about knocking that pink elephant out of there by thinking about a blue hot air balloon. Now, if we have to replace it to get rid of the negative effects of focusing on it, of focusing on that PCT, let's replace it with the potential solution. I want you to think of your brain like a mental chalkboard. You have a line drawn right down the middle, and there's a problem side on the left and a solution side on the right. The problem side is all filled in. We're really good about being experts over there. But while we're over there on the problem side of our mental chalkboard, our stress and anxiety are increasing, and our ability to do anything about our problems is decreasing. So the name of the game is to get from that problem side to the solution side within 60 seconds. Now we need this 60-second marker because it's enough time to recognize that you're over there on the problem side, but not enough time for that cortisol release to take over. Now your ticket from the problem side to the solution side comes in the form of something called the RSF tool, the Relentless Solution Focus Tool. Now, the RSF tool comes in the form of a question. And here it is. What is one thing I can do that could make this better? What is one thing I can do that could make this better? This is your ticket. See, there's this thing that happens in the brain. It's called instinctive elaboration. When we're asked a question, the entire brain lights up, and you can't help but focus on answering that question. Not only does it force you to focus on a potential solution by answering that question, that RSF tool, but you also actually become more motivated to act on that solution. What is one thing I can do that could make this better? So, back to the mental chalkboard. You recognize you're on the problem side of the mental chalkboard. You ask yourself that RSF tool question. What's one thing I can do that could make this better? And you come up with an answer. You land on the solution side for about 3 minutes. But then that PCT grabs you again, and you land back on the problem side. That's okay. You get another 60 seconds. You ask and answer that RSF tool question again. What's one thing I can do that could make this better? This is where the relentless part comes in. Remember, this is relentless solution focus, not solution focus. Mental toughness means going back and forth from that problem to the solution side and asking that RSF tool question as many times as it takes. So here are 3 guidelines to follow when using the RSF tool question. Number 1, you can't say, I don't know. Saying I don't know is the one way you can stop instinctive elaboration and prevent your brain from coming up with potential solutions. Of course you don't know. If you knew, it wouldn't be something you were worried about or focused on to begin with. You can't say I don't know or anything that represents I don't know. You have to force yourself to come up with something. Even a response that you don't feel great about counts. Guideline number 2, the +1 concept. Notice that the RSF tool question is what is one thing I can do that could make this better? Just by 1 inch. 1 inch at a time. Don't worry about complete resolution to your problem or situation. Just search for that 1 inch. +1. Guideline number 3. There is always a solution. Always. You have to know. You have to believe that there's a solution, which really starts with the way we define solutions. I want you defining solution as any improvement whatsoever to the current problem, even if it's an improvement to the way you deal with that problem. So let's review. Step 1 is to recognize. Recognize when you're in need of RSF, which is any time you're focused on a problem or self-doubt or something that you can't control. And remember, your body will tell you this. Step 2, replace. Replace that PCT with RSF using the RSF tool. Ask and answer that RSF tool question within 60 seconds. What is one thing I can do that could make this better? Step 3 is to retrain. Now, step 3 is really important because, again, this PCT, this problem-centric thought, this perfectionist mentality is so normal for us. It's our default. So if we don't do consistent training to rewire our brain, we can't expect to make lasting change. Remember, a pep talk won't change behavior for long. You have to do something. So step 3 is to retrain, to take advantage of neuroplasticity, the ability for the brain to mold and rewire itself through training, to make the relentless solution-focused mentality your normal. And the retraining comes in the form of something called the success log. Now, the success log is a daily tool that takes 1 minute to complete, And it trains your brain to shift from this normal problem-centric thought and perfectionist mindset to the solution-focused mentality, the RSF mentality. Now, individuals with the RSF mentality give themselves credit where credit is due, and they relentlessly pursue improvement, not perfection. That which you focus on expands. When you're focused on what you're doing well, you're going to do more things well. When you're focused on what you want to improve, you're going to make improvements much more quickly, much more effectively. This is the difference between those who are successful and those who are highly successful and the happiest. And again, we all probably know that we should be more positive and less of a perfectionist, less hard on ourselves, and better at prioritizing, but we just haven't been taught how to do this. This is exactly what the success log is going to do for you. So here it is. There are 4 questions on the success log that don't need to take you more than 1 minute to complete. And it's important that you follow the exact wording of these questions. So question number 1, the first question on the success log is, what 3 things did I do well in the last 24 hours? What 3 things did I do well in the last 24 hours? Now, don't think that you need to cure cancer for something to count as a done well. That's your perfectionism talking. Anything that promotes your personal or professional well-being counts, no matter how small. So, for example, I spent 10 minutes reading to my son before bed, or I got my 30-minute workout in, or I pointed out a job well done in a team member. I apologized without giving an excuse when I was late to a phone call. Remember, that which you focus on expands. Each time you fill out your success log, it's like putting pennies into your piggy bank of self-confidence. You won't necessarily feel any differently when you do this, but during those down months or during times of adversity, you will be really glad you've been making those investments. Remember, this is about retraining your brain to be better able to recognize what you're doing well instead of focusing on mistakes or self-doubt or shortcomings or how far you still have to go. You are changing your normal course of thought. You are retraining your brain to pay attention to the little things you're doing well. So question number 2, what is one thing I want to improve in the next 24 hours? Remember, your normal perfectionist mentality wants you to focus on where you feel like you screwed up that day. Instead, you're forcing your brain to identify one thing you want to improve. And keep in mind, there may be 50 things you want to work on improving, but research shows that you will be significantly more successful if you stick to no more than one. So some examples of this might be, I want to connect more with my kids. I want to get my calls done. Bring in more new business. Finish the presentation I've been putting off. Specifically, what you want to work on improving isn't as important as the benefit of just keeping your focus on making improvements, maintaining that relentless solution-focused mindset. You're training your brain to focus on making improvements rather than where you're falling short of perfection. Now, question number 3 on the success log is, what is one thing I can do that could help make that improvement? We're not looking for complete resolution or perfection here. We're looking for improvement. And this has to be something actionable and concrete. Most people are fairly good at knowing what they want to improve, but most don't take that critical next step of identifying how to make that improvement. What's one thing I can do that could help make that improvement? So for example, if your relationship is struggling and you wrote that you wanted to improve feeling connected to your spouse, you can't just say for the one thing that you can do that could help make the improvement that you'll try to be more present. Saying that you'll try just isn't concrete. But what you could say is spend 10 minutes of undistracted time together without TV or devices tonight. Or have a drink together on the deck tonight. If the one thing you wanted to improve is bringing in more new business, maybe your answer to the one thing you could do differently that could help make the improvement is to network with one new person tomorrow. Or spend 15 minutes the next day researching on LinkedIn. Remember, you're just looking for improvement here, not complete resolution. +1. If you improve by 1 inch each day, think of where you'll be at the end of a week, or by the end of the month, or by the end of a year. Now, the last question on the success log. 1 to 10, how well did I do with RSF in the last 24 hours? Now, the way you rate this is what percentage of the time, when your brain was focused on a problem or a potential problem or something that you can't control, within 60 seconds, you asked and answered that RSF tool question. What's one thing I can do that could make this better? What percentage of the time, within 60 seconds, when your brain was focused on PCT or a problem, were you able to ask and answer that RSF tool question? So if you did it about 60% of the time, you'd be a 6 out of 10. If you did it about 40% of the time, you'd be a 4 out of 10. The goal here eventually is a 9. In our experience, 9s or better on RSF is where the highly successful and the happiest live. But don't expect to be a 9 right away. In fact, you may feel like your baseline RSF score is pretty low, and that's okay. Evaluating it in your success log each day will drive consistent improvement. Now again, this can't just be a pep talk. I hope I've convinced you how important this RSF mentality and success log is. Those 4 questions that you complete on a daily basis. But keep in mind that knowing something does nothing. Knowing what you should be doing doesn't do anything for your well-being. You must do something. 1 minute. 1 minute is about the amount of time it takes to make your morning coffee. 1 minute to answer those 4 success log questions is all it takes. And I know it seems simple, but I see the effects of people committing to that 1 minute per day. That which you focus on expands. If you will devote 1 minute per day, or at least 3 or 4 times per week, to completing those 4 questions in the success log, I guarantee you will see the effects. So I grew up watching Mr. Rogers. My boys grew up watching Daniel Tiger, which is sort of a modern day Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood if you're not familiar with it. But it's a Fred Rogers production that follows the children of the characters that I grew up watching. Now, I think I got more out of the show learning how to deal with parenting situations than even my kids did. But I watched a documentary about Fred Rogers and his passion and commitment to helping kids navigate growing up. Now, Fred Rogers has passed away, but someone close to him in this documentary was being interviewed and was describing how in one episode, Mr. Rogers wanted the kids to understand what a minute was. He wanted them to be able to feel what a minute of time felt like. So one episode of the show, he took an egg timer and he set it for 60 seconds. And he sat it on the table and sat in silence with that egg timer for 1 minute. Now, can you imagine today a kids show that included 1 minute of silence? And what this person who was being interviewed, who was involved in the show, said about that example and what it represented was that in this show, which ran for over 30 years, was that there was a lot of slow space, but no wasted space. Slow space, but no wasted space. We are all so busy. Life doesn't seem to slow down, and it may not seem like it now, but it will be hard to devote 60 seconds of slow space each day to completing your success logs. It will be tempting to brush it off because you're busy and you have too many urgent things to get done. But remember that Fred Rogers moment when you're tempted to say, I don't have time to get my success log done today, or I'll do it later. It may be slow space, but it is one of the most impactful ways you can spend that 1 minute. Again, you should feel great about yourself for taking the time to listen to this and investing in yourself and your own improvement. If you're looking for more tools and fundamentals like this, our bestseller, Relentless Solution Focus, is a great resource and next step for you. You'll hear from me every couple of weeks in your email with tips and strategies that will continue making a maximum impact on your life in a way that can be done with simplicity and consistency. I promise I won't spam you, and I'll make sure you know about any new courses or resources I have for you as they become available. But thanks again for listening, and stay relentless.